So let's understand identity imprint from a psychological perspective. Usually, identity imprinting occurs when a repeated experience becomes integrated into person's self-concept, core beliefs, otherwise client autonomy, sense of self, sense of ego. That's what we call really ego. I think the word ego is um, overrated. I think ego often misunderstood with egoistic. That's a different understanding. Ego truly means sense of self. Your sense of self, your ego, who you are, your identity, our core beliefs, our core values, they are shaped by the identity imprinting. That's a psychological perspective. And the neurobiological perspective is that when an experience is repeated, it influences our neural path. It's very, very simple. And this is something we discuss very often. If you want to remember something, what do? We repeat it over and over again. We talk about manifestation. We talk about affirmations. And you as professional coaches, you use these tools time to time with clients. If not, clients use these tools for their own development. Like the snow mountain that very often I talk about. When one person go through that specific snow path, we come to learn that that path is possible. And our brain is very much like that. Our nervous system is very much like that. Oh, this path is possible. Let's reuse it. And let's reuse it. And let's reuse it. The more we reuse that specific path, the more it becomes stronger. The neural path becomes stronger. And that's why when you initially started driving, you have to be so absolutely vigilant about every single little thing. And you were driving for 6 months, you were not as vigilant. You can drive quite normally. And then after 5 years of driving, you no longer even think about driving. You just get in your car, you go from A to B. You don't even really think how many times you braked, how many times you saw the red lights. You don't even recall that anymore. You can be completely out of your mind. You can be completely be doing something in your mind and not think about driving at all. Why? Because the right neural paths have been created. They have been established strong enough in a way that now you can use it almost in an automatic way. So when a specific experience is repeated over and over again, in this case, let's say the guilt, let's say the shame is established over and over and over again, this neural path is established. Very often I see people saying to her, be positive. Why do you think like that? Why are you negative? Why are you thinking that something will happen? Nothing will happen. It's so easy for someone to say looking from outside. But when we have a pre-existing path that keeps telling us, like if you look at anxiety disorder, if you simply look at anxiety disorder very often comes from many different things, of course. But one of the common ways of anxiety being created is that we learned a specific fear, and that fear path is so strong, it everything in the environment triggers that specific path so that we feel anxious around pretty much everything. Now, that's because there's a neural path that is created. And we also have emotional memory. Now, we will talk more about that in somatic component. Let me talk about an emotional memory. You come across a book that you haven't used for a very long time. And then you open the book as you brush through the pages, as the pages are turning, it kicks out all the it pushes all the air in the book. And with that comes the fragrance of the book. And all of a sudden, you're transformed to a moment back in time. Maybe it's your grandmother's home. You remember reading a book with the similar fragrance. You remember the warmth of your grandmother. You immediately go into an emotional state. Sometimes that brings you a little twinkle into your eyes or just makes you smile. Why is that? Because there's an emotional memory that is created. And it is very same on the other way around. There is someone that you meet and that person seemed pleasant. Let's say you have had some kind of a bad experience with someone named, let's say, Joseph. And this person all of a sudden say the word, my name is Joseph. All of a sudden, there are emotional memories that trigger in a way that all of a sudden you become protective of yourself towards this person just because of their name, although you met that person for the very first time. Now, that is an obvious one. That is an obvious one. I have worked with clients, those who have been in relationships for years, many years. And the night of their honeymoon, let's say they have many people who have never had physical intimacy, in other words, sexual relations. They have been together for a while, and they got married, and then they went into that moment of connecting together in physical intimacy. And one of them all of a sudden pushed the person, ran out of their bedroom screaming, and they have no idea why that happened. This is a person I know for many years, but I cannot become intimate with that person. Imagine the kind of emotional memory. Perhaps that person had a experience of sexual assault. Maybe they remember that experience. Maybe they don't remember that experience. Maybe they were too young to remember that kind of experience. But with the touch of their partner, perhaps those memories triggered. So certain implicit memories can show up. Because in our body, we have a threat prediction system. Our nervous system is hardwired for this threat prediction system. It's gradually shaping expectation about ourselves and about the world. So it's not that. That's why I said you cannot just tell someone, walk someone out of their negative thinking. We cannot just simply walk someone out of their anxiety, the stress, the impairment that they're experiencing. It requires a deeper intervention because it's not just in their head. It's not just a thinking. It's just about a bodily experience, an emotional experience, implicit memories kicking in, the threat prediction system being activated. It's not that simple. And that's why, as a professional coach, having this awareness is so important when your clients keep coming back, having not done their actions that they undertook, that they committed. If it frustrates them, if it frustrates you, it's telling something about both of you. So identity imprinting often stored through implicit memories, experiences, re- remembered unconsciously. We can't necessarily, our body remembers it. Our nervous system, the threat prediction system remembers it. But we don't really consciously remember, or we cannot recollect that experience. For an example, during the first 1,000 days of your childhood, you have no concepts, you have no frameworks, you're not able to really make sense. What happens to one during that time often is stored in the unconscious memory. And those are what we call implicit memories. And emotional memories, residue of experiences, like how our heart starts to beat fast, how our palms become sweaty, core beliefs, deep assumptions about ourselves that I am worthy, I am not worthy, I'm not good enough, so on, and self schema, our mental blueprint, the individual definition of our sense of self. People say, I'm a hot tempered person. I have this tendency of addiction. I have this tendency of losing it easily. I am a hard worker. I put others first before me. Some of them sound noble. Some of them sound like we are degrading ourselves to a certain extent. Now, these self schemas were created based on the experiences we have had as imprints that we have created and the things that the nervous system has learned, especially the automatic learning without our conscious. If you may be attending my sessions, I keep saying our conscious self is just so little. Our conscious self is so small. Our unconscious self really constitute most of us who we are. And when I say that, it also should pose the question, if you are a reflective person, it also should pose the question, if most of our behavior, most of our ways of experiencing this world is unconscious. What is there? Why is there consciousness? Why are we consciously aware? And most importantly, what are we supposed to do with that consciousness? What are we supposed to do with that very small amount of who we believe we are, although which we are not? I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to leave you with that question, food for thoughts. If we are mostly unconscious, if we mostly operate with something that's already programmed, while feeling like we have some control, we have some consciousness, what are we really doing on this blue planet? Why are we here? It's a larger question, perhaps an existential question, perhaps a spiritual question. And imagine if you all could have some level of answer to it, I think the world will be a different place. So now that we are talking about implicit memories, emotional memory, core beliefs, self-schema, nervous system learning, you are starting to recognize the reason why I went around sense of self over and over and over again, showing you things like this, talking about that you consist of so many elements that are influencing your identity, that is influencing your sense of self being here, doing what we are doing. So now, more than ever, when you look at this image, you're starting to recognize what trauma imprinting is, how it forms, changes us to be who we truly are. Usually, the identity imprinting is triggered by criticism, failure, rejection, conflicts, visibility, uncertainty. And I believe many of us can, not just our clients, many of us can relate to these realities. I used to have many of these. And if I was controlled by those imprinting, I wouldn't be able to share this knowledge with you. I wouldn't be able to be in this space with you. So therefore, really opening up to who we are truly, our inner dynamics, the unconscious self is crucial in order for us to grow, transform, and live a fulfilled life. So identity imprinting usually directly impact self-concept, core beliefs, self-worthiness, self-confidence, which we call imposter syndrome very often, and perfectionism. These are some of the areas that directly impact in terms of identity imprinting. So now let's look at a few brief case studies. Since we still have a bit of time, let's look at brief case studies to identifying identity imprinting. Right. So here I would like to share with you the perfectionist. Remember, I talk about CTICC trauma imprinting pathway. So let's put the perfectionist into the trauma imprinting pathway. The event could be repeated criticism. Repeated criticism. Trauma response could be withdrawal, disappointment due to feeling shame, guilt, and wanting to perform to gain safety. If this person is aggressive towards me, criticizing me, let me try and please this person. And the interesting thing is sometimes that not only when that person is present, we do that to the person, but we also do that to people, those who have similar behavior. Perhaps a child grew up with the parent, let's say the mother was criticizing always. As a result, the child learned to please the mother, help the mother, do everything and not get anything wrong so that the mother will not criticize. And later on, they are attracted to a partner who is also has the similar tendencies like the mother. So now we end up pleasing. Perhaps as a child, we please the mother by helping with the errands, by doing the homework on the dot, perhaps. But maybe later we do that by doing sexual favors towards our partner, identifying ourselves that I'm really good at specific sexual act which my partner loves. There's nothing wrong with that. Please don't get me wrong. It's not wrong. It's nothing bad. As far as that you are happy, your partner is happy, and there's a right amount of reciprocation if that's what is required. But we might identify ourselves with that specific sexual act or that specific way of being because we misunderstood that is who I am. Perhaps we are not recognizing that is a trauma imprint in the play, an unconscious trauma imprint that is making you in that specific behavior. Now, where this becomes problematic is when there's an imbalanced reciprocation, when someone is being taken advantage of, when someone is the victim of the other person's perhaps toxicity. Now that becomes problematic. And that the trauma imprint might give in that space without recognizing that we are in a space of toxicism. And often this kind of people-pleasing behavior could come from a place of, I am not good enough. So if I did this, I could be good enough. So we would overwork. We would work very hard. So the life outcomes could be overworking, fearing of mistakes, difficulty of delegating, excessive preparation, constant self-criticism, criticizing ourselves, looking at the mirror, and difficulty celebrating success. How many of your clients find it difficult to celebrate? Perhaps let me ask this. How many of are you comfortable providing a compliment to your client? How many of you are comfortable celebrating with the client's success? If you say it's quite difficult for me, yes, you probably have some, I invite you to a place of reflection. And when we look at life outcomes, please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the trauma imprinting is bad. I'm not saying that they are always negative. What I'm really trying to invite you to think about is the survivor thinking, the narrative. The trauma imprinting is necessary for us to survive in our ecosystem, is in this 3D world ecosystem. It's required for us to have trauma imprinted. Therefore, we understand potential danger. Therefore, we can survive. So having trauma imprinting is actually beneficial in many ways. When we go to a specific extreme or when things are impairing us, that's the problem. If you come to simply think about some of the conflicts that is in the world, most of the world leaders, those who are involved in the conflict, they are simply not recognizing this. They are simply not understanding this. They use the fear, they use all the imprinting that we have gotten generation after generation through the evolution from one species to another for the advantage of taking power or collecting resources. If we all understood that the fear is inherent, fear is a necessity for us to survive, but we do not need to imply fear on other people. Maybe not just only in world leaders who are fighting with each others, but also the time that you were upset with your partner, the time that your client was upset with their boss. They forgot, they are not aware that the imprinting doesn't need to necessarily define us. We do not have to throw this trauma imprinting at each other and make our life really very difficult. Make some children in some parts of the world devastated, losing parents, losing arms, losing limbs. There are benefits of life, outcomes of traumatic experiences and imprinting. For an example, when we have had certain trauma imprints, the potential benefits like this kind of the perfectionism related benefits could be high achievements. We need high achievers in the world. Professional success, having strong standards, And when we are unable to balance it out, when we are unaware of them, then we go towards burnout. Then we go towards anxiety, imposter syndrome, and end up achieving without fulfillment. So our narrative is not trauma imprinting is bad, inherently bad. Our narrative is trauma imprinting is inherently required in order for us to have this 3D world experience. And what do we do with it is the question. That invites us to awareness. And that's what you do with your clients, awareness, enabling awareness. Coaching is a process that enables awareness. Coaching can be a process that could help people to take actions and continue to grow. But that's not the key area. If you focus on coaching the person, working with clients' autonomy, you're starting to recognize now the trauma imprinting is not something to look away or something that we should not address, something that we should think that is not our territory as coaches. It indeed is our territory of coaching. Why? Because we work with clients' autonomy. We work with clients' sense of self. We work with the person. That's what we do. So let's look at another one. Let's look at the invisible one. Hyper-independent one first. Event, repeated emotional neglect. So it created loneliness, disappointment, unmet emotional needs, gradual withdrawal from seeking support. This becomes repeated. The unmet support was not met and emotionally unavailable. So the trauma imprint is I can only rely on myself. I can only rely on myself. The identity is hyper independent. I think now I do not have to say much. Potential key behavior can be solving problems all alone. And I could raise my hand for this. And I still have many of these tendencies. Think about it. Creating a trauma-informed coaching comprehensive framework because it wasn't there. Solve problems alone very often, right? Well, it is useful, right? It creates potential. But at the same time, being aware when we cross the line to the other side. So rarely ask for help, difficulty receiving support, struggle to delegate, avoids vulnerability, carries excessive responsibility, prefers self-reliance, even if the support is available. What are some benefits? Strong resilience, self-sufficiency, strong problem-solving skills, ability to function independently. But if we cross the line, we could be in isolation, emotional loneliness, burnout, difficulty sustaining relationships. Let's look at the last one, the invisible one. The event is humiliation after speaking up. This is not A to A, B, C, D accurate. This now probably you're starting to notice it's a combination of all. It's not that one specific identity is formed by just one experience. It's a complex of experiences, not only just yours, but also your ancestors, leading you into these imprints. So the imprints themselves are complicated. The behavior itself, identity itself is complicated. Very often we combine many of those complications, and so the complex identities are formed. So the trauma response is a shame, embarrassment, fear of judgment, withdrawal from visibility. And this criticism, ridicule, bullying, negative evaluation continues on. Being seen is dangerous. Like I said earlier, you have the best message in the world. You know that you have some deep insight that you'd like to share. You know you have a client who is an artist who want to share their message. They have written a book, but they are unable to publish it somehow. It's because they are afraid of being seen. They are afraid of the comment section. They are afraid of what other people would say. So the identity is the invisible, the quiet, the withdrawn, if not the humble one. And this, the potential key behavior is self-silencing while there's so much capacity. Avoid visibility, hesitate to express opinions, very hard to share the opinion in a relationship. You know that it's outright wrong, but somehow you cannot get the words out of your mouth. You rehearse it over and over and over again in your head. You think about it. Why did I not say something? I should have said this. I should have said that. I should have been like this. I should have been like that. Not just only your clients. You probably hear this. Avoid opportunities. Difficulty advocating for themselves. Allowing people to take advantage of some sort of people-pleasing behavior. Not assertive enough. Always push the others to the spotlight and remain outside because of the wanting to be invisible. So potential benefits could be reduce exposure to criticism in a way, because sometimes whistleblowers, sometimes people who find faults get exposed to criticism, and being exposed to criticism is a very challenging experience, and that could be re-traumatizing. So avoidance of interpersonal conflict, perceived humility. Very often, people like that could come across as if they have a lot of humility, and risk of public scrutiny, uh, scrutiny, right? So not being exposed to the public, not receiving harsh comments, feedback from the public. And then we also can think about when we cross the barrier, we end up missing opportunities. We could be such influence, we could be inspiration, but we stay small. And a lot of underutilized potential within us. And then unrealized growth, frustration around not being able to achieve what we truly want to achieve in life. So those are 3 examples of identity imprinting in a very simple form, in a very, very simple form. Now, I would like to bring your attention to the initial reflection. What are some qualities of your clients, both constructive and non-constructive, that you notice? And how are they connected to the trauma imprints that we are talking about here? You are starting to recognize the more we talk about trauma, it's not about what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad anymore. It's really about what is pain and what is pleasure, or to which extent one thing has pleasure, to which extent it has less pleasure, or which extent something is painful, to which extent it can be extended. So this is a question, reflection I would leave you with. As you work with your clients, you will start to see trauma imprinting. As you reflect on yourself, you will see the trauma imprinting. As you work relationally with other people, you will probably see trauma imprinting. To extend that trauma, extend that reflection, I would like to ask, which of these identities have you observed in your clients? The perfectionist, the hyper-independent one, the one who wants to be invisible, the pursuer, the peacemaker, the caretaker, the controller, hypervigilant one, the braced body. What adaptation might be hidden behind this behavior? And what would that mean for you to have that knowledge, for you to hold space for that client? Because you notice now, you cannot coach the perfectionist the same way you would coach the pursuer. You cannot coach the same one who, the peacemaker, the same way you would coach the one who is bracing their body, because somatically they are hindered. Because we all have different adaptations. We have different trauma imprinting within us. And this knowledge for your client and for you is going to be absolutely, absolutely valuable when you work with the client autonomy. Now, for further reflection, I must mention, not all trauma imprints remain limited to symptoms. Not all trauma imprints are considered symptoms. That's why procrastination, one would say, is not a clinical condition. They can be right. It may be part of their identity. The question is, where was this adaptation created? How was this adaptation created? What does that mean to you now? Not all trauma imprints become trauma disorders either. So there you are. Now, if you thought when we work with in a trauma context, trauma-informed context with the client, does that cross a clinical boundary? It doesn't need to, because not all trauma imprints, the adaptation patterns, survival adaptations, let me use the word adaptation imprints in that case, survival imprints in that case, are the ones that we are working with. And that doesn't necessarily define the client or the client needs to have a clinical diagnosis. And that's not our territory to begin with. And not all aftermath of trauma remain limited to symptoms or qualify for a diagnosis. So if this requires a little bit of, because I think it's almost like a tongue twister, since especially this information is new to some of you. As you acquire these slides, I invite you to come back here and reflect if it sparked an interest. So now if some of you might be thinking everything is an imprint and we are stuck with it, like what I said earlier, something is imprinted in the stone. Perhaps you're starting to recognize it's not the case. That's not where we are going with this. Where we are really going with this is understanding that the more we become aware, the more we know the blueprint to ourselves, we find the ways inside, we find the ways to our emotions, we find the ways to grow, the post-traumatic growth, post-traumatic possibility, post-traumatic transformation is our focus. If an experience can shape the nervous system into a trauma imprint that is deserving, if not that is non-constructive for the person, other new, more positive experiences also can reshape our nervous system. That's the good news. For that, it requires space. For that, requires knowledge. For that, as coaches, you need to understand your clients. You need to provide the right space, not chase the client down on a road or a rabbit hole where action, performance, accountability, achievement are only celebrated or challenged. It is a space to it is a place to slow down. It is a place to allow understanding. It is a place to allow co-regulation. It is a place to create deep empathy. This is why you came to this profession to begin with. You did not come here to chase clients with their actions, accountability, achieving. Achieving is great, don't get me wrong. You came here because you deep down, you knew that you are that kind of healer. I know that the word healer is very uncomfortable to be used, but I believe every mother is a healer. Every brother is a healer. Every coach is a healer. Every policeman should be a healer. It's just that we have forgotten our true essence. Instead, we are working through this unconscious part of us, inflicting pain on each other, forgetting the healer. So I invite you to remember that innately there's a healer within you. If the adversity can influence identity, awareness, corrective action, corrective experience, co-regulation can also influence the identity, can form the identity. So we don't say that the nature, which is our grandparents, our ancestors had so many difficulties, therefore I limit myself to these challenges. We don't say that. We say it's true that my ancestors went through these experiences and they live within me through my genetics. They are me. So I'm going to heal them through healing myself, through corrective, right experiences, be it coaching, be it going to a psychotherapist, be it breath work, be it psychedelic integration, whatever that is, that we can influence our identity, we can change our identity, we can truly become our identity that we didn't know who we truly were. We were lost most of the time because the identity imprinting just happened. We didn't know how to give permission. When it happened, permission was not taken. So now we have the capacity to allow ourselves into activities, co-regulation, therapy, coaching, whatever it is that creates us, rebuilds your true authenticity, whatever that is, that you want, you can reiterate it. And if relationships, traumatic relationships, toxic relationship can contribute to imprinting, also regulation, loving, kind relationships also can contribute to integration and can contribute to post-traumatic transformation. That's what is our focus. And that's why I'm here. That's why you're here. So we technically use the word trauma imprinting, but I invite you to think about them as adaptive imprinting, protective imprinting, survival imprinting, and imprinting with immense potential. We started with the word trauma imprinting because I would like to remain scientific. I would like to provide you with the right knowledge. But the more I study this subject, the more I realize that the word trauma is a very small, stigmatized, small word. Adaptation, survival, protection, evolution are the true imprinting that are being created in our body. And that's much larger than us. Again, it invites us to ruminate on spiritual questions, invites us to ruminate on existential questions, which I believe very important. That's why this complex looking diagram I was talking about during last week. It's true that there are stressor related disorders. If you look at this first here, and then it creates imprint, there's a formation, there's an effect of it. It's true. There are stressor related experiences. We accept it as part of human reality, as part of reality of all beings for that matter. It creates imprints, it creates formations, and it has effects of it. But if we can create trauma-informed care, integrate, then we can transform, and together we can create expanded embodiment of the highest self that we intend to create. Although this entire diagram seemed very complicated, now as you're looking A to Z, you're starting to recognize it's a very simple process. If you come to think of it, if we really pay attention to this, we are so busy making money, conflicting with each other, involved in problems, the politics, and so on. It seems like we completely diverted from what we are here to truly do. And I commend you, I appreciate you, I applaud you and celebrate you for being a coach, a professional coach, a healer, a psychotherapist, a psychologist, a parent, a brother who is becoming aware of who we truly are and asking the question, what should we really be doing with this one life we have? So the nervous system is not trying to harm you. The nervous system is trying to protect you. And that's why you recall this cat got ejected from its place because the nervous system is trying to protect this cat. And that's why these children, the children of the survivors of the Holocaust, have a longer period of activation when they're exposed to a threat. It's not the nervous system wants to harm these children, rather protect them. And that's how trauma informs love. With that, thank you very much for sharing this moment with me, this space with me. I send all of you love and light, and I look forward to seeing you in the next session. Thank you very much, and bye for now.